The night was unusually quiet in the small coastal town of Seabreeze. The only sounds were the rhythmic crashing of waves against the shore and the distant hoot of an owl. But that peace shattered when a streak of fire tore across the sky, brighter than any star. It blazed through the atmosphere with a deafening roar before slamming into the forest just outside town. Trees splintered, and a shockwave rippled outward, shaking windows and waking residents from their sleep. Within minutes, curious onlookers gathered at the edge of the woods. Some carried flashlights. Others held phones to record whatever had fallen from the heavens. Emergency vehicles arrived soon after, their red and blue lights painting the dark trees in eerie colors. Firefighters and police officers cordoned off the area, warning people to stay back. No one knew what they were dealing with, but the air buzzed with speculation. Was it a meteor, a satellite, or something alien? Deep within the wreckage, partially buried under charred debris, lay a figure no taller than a child. Her skin shimmered faintly, glowing like moonlight reflecting off water. She wore tattered clothing made of materials no one recognized, and her wide, frightened eyes darted around as she tried to stand. Her movements were shaky, uncoordinated, as if every step caused her pain. When she finally emerged into the open, gasps erupted from the crowd. "She's alive," someone shouted. But instead of compassion, fear took hold. Rumors spread faster than wildfire. "She's not human," one man yelled, pointing at her glowing skin. "What if she's dangerous?" Another voice chimed in. "Aliens always attack first. Haven't you seen the movies?" The local sheriff stepped forward, his hand resting on his holstered gun. "Stay back," he ordered, raising his voice over the growing chaos. "We don't know what this thing is." His words sealed her fate. Most people backed away, some running outright. A few brave souls lingered, but even they kept their distance, unsure whether to help or flee. Amidst the panic, two figures approached cautiously, not out of fear, but curiosity. Dr. Elena Voss and Dr. Marcus Kane pushed through the crowd, ignoring the warnings shouted by bystanders. They weren't strangers to danger. Both were marine biologists who spent years studying apex predators like great white sharks and saltwater crocodiles. People often called them the carnivorous humans because of their work, joking that they must have a death wish. In reality, they were passionate about protecting misunderstood creatures. And now, they saw another creature in need. "Wait," Elena called to the sheriff as Marcus knelt beside the girl. Up close, she looked even more fragile. Her breathing was shallow, and there was a gash on her arm that glowed faintly, almost as if it were healing itself. Despite her injuries, she didn't lash out or show aggression. Instead, she clutched a strange device in her hands, its surface cracked but still pulsing with soft light. "We can't leave her here," Marcus said firmly, looking up at Elena. "She's scared, hurt, and clearly intelligent. Whatever she is, she's not our enemy." Elena nodded, already pulling off her jacket to wrap around the girl's shoulders. "Let's get her out of here." The sheriff hesitated, torn between duty and doubt. Finally, he sighed. "Do what you want, but don't blame me if this goes sideways." As Elena and Marcus led the girl away, the crowd parted silently. Some watched with suspicion, while others whispered prayers for safety. For now, the alien girl had protectors. But how long would that last in a world quick to judge and slow to trust? The drive back to their research lab was tense. Elena sat in the passenger seat, glancing over her shoulder at the alien girl huddled in the back. Marcus kept his eyes on the winding coastal road, his knuckles white against the steering wheel. The girl, still unnamed, didn't say a word, though her glowing skin dimmed slightly as if reacting to her surroundings. She clutched the broken device tightly, her small hands trembling. "Do you think she understands us?" Elena asked quietly, breaking the silence. Marcus shrugged. "Hard to tell, but fear is universal. If we can show her we're not a threat, maybe she'll open up." Elena nodded but couldn't shake the unease creeping into her mind. They'd seen this kind of reaction before, not from aliens, but from animals. Sharks circling too close to boats, dolphins caught in fishing nets, even crocodiles cornered by humans. Fear made creatures unpredictable, and while this girl seemed harmless, they couldn't afford to underestimate her. When they arrived at the lab, it felt like stepping into another world. Nestled between jagged cliffs and crashing waves, the facility was isolated enough to keep prying eyes away. Inside, tanks filled with marine life lined the walls. Sharks, eels, octopuses, all part of Marcus and Alina's ongoing studies. It wasn't luxurious, but it was safe. "This will do for now," Marcus said, leading the girl to a makeshift bed in the corner. He grabbed a first aid kit and motioned for Alina to sit beside her. "Let's see what we're dealing with." At first, the girl flinched when Alina reached out, her wide eyes darting around the room. But then something unexpected happened. As Alina gently took her injured arm, the glowing moon began to fade, closing itself almost instantly. Both scientists froze, staring in disbelief. "Did you see that?" Alina whispered. Marcus leaned closer, examining the now smooth skin. "Self-healing, or regeneration. This changes everything." Despite her strange abilities, the girl remained passive, watching them with a mix of curiosity and caution. She pointed to the device in her hand, her movements hesitant but deliberate. It pulsed faintly, casting soft light across her face. "She wants us to fix it," Alina realized aloud. "Maybe it's how she communicates." Marcus grabbed tools from his workbench and began inspecting the device. "It's damaged, but not beyond repair. Give me some time." As he worked, Alina tried to connect with the girl. She mimicked gestures, smiling, waving, pointing to objects around the room. At first, there was no response, but slowly the girl started copying her actions. When Alina pointed to herself and said, "Alina," the girl tilted her head, then touched her own chest. "Luma," she murmured softly, her voice melodic yet unfamiliar. Alina's heart skipped a beat. "Luma." The girl nodded, repeating the name. For the first time since they'd found her, she smiled, a small, fragile thing, but genuine. Outside, however, things weren't so peaceful. News of the crash had spread quickly, fueled by shaky phone footage and wild speculation. Social media erupted with theories about the alien visitor. Some claimed she was a scout for an invasion fleet. Others believed she carried deadly diseases. Even local news outlets picked up the story, dubbing her the Glow Girl and warning viewers to stay vigilant. Government agents arrived within hours, demanding answers. Two men in dark suits knocked on the lab door just as Marcus finished repairing Luma's device. Their badges gleamed under the harsh fluorescent lights. "We're here to take custody of the extraterrestrial entity," one agent said coldly, his tone leaving no room for argument. Marcus crossed his arms. "Over my dead body. She's injured and scared. We're helping her." The second agent smirked. "You don't understand what you're dealing with. Let the professionals handle this." Alina stepped forward, her voice steady despite the knot in her stomach. "She hasn't hurt anyone. All she wants is help." The agents exchanged a glance before turning to leave. "Fine, but don't say we didn't warn you." As the door slammed shut behind them, Alina let out a shaky breath. "They'll be back." Marcus nodded grimly. "Then we'd better figure out who, or what, she really is. And fast." In the corner, Luma watched silently, her glowing skin flickering faintly. Whatever secrets she held, they were far bigger than anyone could imagine. The next morning, sunlight streamed through the lab's windows, casting golden reflections on the water tanks. Luma sat cross-legged on the floor, her glowing skin dimmed to a soft shimmer as she examined the repaired device Marcus had placed in front of her. The object hummed faintly, its fractured surface now patched together with wires and adhesive. She touched it gingerly, her fingers tracing the edges as if reconnecting with an old friend. Alina watched from a distance, sipping coffee while jotting notes in her journal. She seems attached to that thing, she murmured to Marcus, who was busy tinkering with a laptop nearby. Makes sense, Marcus replied without looking up. If it's her only link to home, or whatever she left behind, it's probably precious to her. Luma suddenly pressed a button on the device, causing it to emit a series of melodic tones. Lights pulsed rhythmically, forming patterns that danced across the walls. Both scientists froze, mesmerized. Then, almost instinctively, Luma began gesturing, pointing at objects around the room and mimicking shapes with her hands. "She's trying to communicate," Elena exclaimed, rushing over with excitement. She grabbed a notebook and started drawing simple pictures: a sun, a tree, a fish. Each time she showed Luma a new image, the girl responded by either nodding or shaking her head, sometimes adding her own gestures to clarify. Marcus joined in, pointing to himself and saying, "Marcus." When Luma repeated the name with surprising accuracy, he grinned. She's learning fast. Over the next few hours, they pieced together fragments of understanding. Luma used the device to project symbols into the air, abstract representations of concepts like safe, danger, and home. Through trial and error, they learned she wasn't just intelligent. She was highly adaptive, capable of grasping human language and behavior at an astonishing pace. But there was more to her than intelligence. As the day wore on, Luma demonstrated abilities that left Elena and Marcus speechless. When Marcus accidentally dropped a glass beaker, shattering it on the floor, Luma extended her hand. A faint glow enveloped the broken pieces, and within seconds, they fused back together, as if nothing had happened. "What was that?" Marcus stammered, picking up the restored beaker. Elena stared, wide-eyed. "Self-repair, or manipulation of matter." Luma smiled timidly, then pointed to her chest and said one word: "Symbiosis." It took them a moment to process what she meant. Symbiosis, the idea of living in harmony, mutual benefit. Was this how her species survived? By cooperating rather than competing. As fascinating as these discoveries were, they also raised troubling questions. If Luma's people thrived on cooperation, why had she ended up alone on Earth? And what, or who, had driven her here? Their musings were interrupted by a sudden commotion outside. Voices shouted, tires screeched, and the distant rumble of engines grew louder. Peering through the window, Elena spotted a convoy of black SUVs speeding down the dirt road toward the lab. Government agents, armed and armored, spilled out of the vehicles, surrounding the building. "They're here," Marcus muttered, his jaw tightening. He turned to Luma, who looked up at him with wide, frightened eyes. "We need to hide you." Elena quickly ushered Luma into a storage closet, whispering reassurances. "Stay quiet, okay? We'll handle this." But as the agents pounded on the door, demanding entry, Elena couldn't shake the feeling that their fragile trust with Luma was about to be tested. Whatever secrets she carried, the authorities wouldn't stop until they uncovered them. And neither Elena nor Marcus knew how far they'd go to protect her. For now, all they could do was buy time. The agents stormed into the lab like a tide of black uniforms and cold determination. Their leader, a tall man with sharp features and an even sharper voice, introduced himself as Agent Cole. "We're here for the extraterrestrial entity," he announced without preamble, his tone leaving no room for negotiation. Marcus stepped forward, blocking their path. "She's not some entity. She's a living being, and she's injured. You can't just take her." Cole's lips curled into a humorless smile. "That's not your call to make. Now step aside." Elena joined Marcus, her arms crossed defiantly. "You don't understand what you're dealing with. She hasn't done anything wrong." "And neither have we. Yet," Cole shot back, motioning for his team to spread out. "But if you force our hand..." The tension in the room was palpable, thick enough to choke on. Behind them, hidden in the storage closet, Luma listened silently, her glowing skin dimmed to near invisibility. She understood fragments of their conversation now, piecing together words like danger and take. Fear prickled at her senses, but she stayed still, trusting Alina and Marcus to protect her. As the agents began searching the lab, Marcus whispered urgently to Alina, "We need to distract them. Buy time." Alina nodded, her mind racing. Spotting one agent heading toward the storage closet, she grabbed a clipboard and waved it dramatically. "Hey, you can't go in there. It's biohazardous material." The agent hesitated, glancing back at Cole for confirmation. It was just enough of a delay for Marcus to slip away unnoticed, ducking behind a row of tanks filled with marine life. He moved quickly, retrieving a small waterproof case from beneath his workbench. Inside was a portable hard drive containing all the data they'd gathered about Luma so far, including fragments decoded from her device. Back in the main area, Alina kept the agents occupied by pointing out random equipment and rattling off scientific jargon. "This tank houses a rare species of bioluminescent jellyfish," she explained loudly, gesturing wildly. "Disturbing them could ruin months of research." Her theatrics worked, at least for a moment. The agents exchanged skeptical looks but didn't press further. Meanwhile, Marcus returned, slipping the hard drive into his pocket just as Cole approached. "Enough games," Cole snapped. "Where is it?" "It." Alina feigned confusion. "What exactly are you looking for?" Cole's patience snapped. He signaled his team to tear the lab apart. Cabinets were flung open and shelves overturned. But no matter how thoroughly they searched, they couldn't find Luma. Frustrated, Cole turned his attention back to the scientists. "Fine. If you won't cooperate, we'll do this the hard way." His gaze swept over the room, landing briefly on the storage closet before narrowing suspiciously. "Search every corner." Before anyone could move, a faint hum filled the air. Everyone froze, turning toward the source, the repaired device sitting on the workbench. Its lights pulsed erratically, projecting symbols onto the walls that none of them could decipher. Then, abruptly, it emitted a high-pitched tone that made the agents wince. "What's happening?" Cole demanded, covering his ears. Alina seized the opportunity. "It's malfunctioning." "Back away." The distraction gave Luma the chance she needed. Pushing the closet door open slightly, she extended her hand, focusing intently on the device. The glow around her brightened, and the chaotic projection stabilized, forming a single clear image, a swirling mass of darkness-consuming stars. The room fell silent as everyone stared at the projection. Even Cole seemed momentarily stunned. Is that space?" Alina asked, her voice trembling. Luma nodded solemnly, then pointed to herself, then to the image. Her message was clear. Whatever that dark mass was, it had driven her here. "She's warning us," Marcus realized aloud. "That thing. It's coming." Cole recovered first, his expression hardening. "Pack it up. We're taking everything." As the agents moved to seize the device, Luma stepped out of hiding, her glow intensifying. For the first time, she spoke directly to them, her melodic voice firm. "No. Mine." The agents hesitated, unsure how to react. In that brief moment of uncertainty, Alina grabbed Luma's hand, pulling her toward the exit. "Now," she shouted to Marcus. Together, the three of them bolted out the back door, disappearing into the dense forest surrounding the lab. Behind them, shouts echoed as the agents gave chase. But for now, they were free. And ahead of them lay answers. And danger. The forest was a labyrinth of shadows and tangled roots, but Alina, Marcus, and Luma moved with desperate speed. The sound of breaking branches and distant shouts reminded them they weren't safe yet. Every step carried the risk of capture, or worse. "This way," Marcus whispered, leading them toward a narrow trail that wound down to the rocky shoreline. He had spent years studying this coastline. Its hidden caves and jagged cliffs were as familiar to him as his own lab. If they could reach one of those caves, they might have a chance to regroup. Luma followed closely, her glowing skin dimmed to avoid detection. She clutched her repaired device tightly, its faint hum the only noise aside from their hurried footsteps. Despite her calm demeanor, Elena noticed the tension in her posture. Whatever that dark mass in space was, it weighed heavily on her mind. And now on theirs too. Reaching the edge of the cliff, Marcus signaled for them to stop. Below, waves crashed against jagged rocks, creating a natural barrier that would slow any pursuers. "There's a cave system here," he explained quickly. "We can hide there until we figure out our next move." Elena nodded, scanning the area for signs of danger. "But we can't stay hidden forever. We need help." As if on cue, Marcus's phone buzzed softly in his pocket. Pulling it out cautiously, he saw an encrypted message flashing across the screen. "We're watching. Stay alive." It was signed with a single symbol, a zigzag line resembling a lightning bolt. "The signal," Marcus muttered under his breath, a flicker of hope crossing his face. Elena glanced at him quizzically. "Who?" "A group of hackers who specialize in exposing government secrets," Marcus explained. "They've been following the story online. Looks like they're offering us support." Elena raised an eyebrow. "Hackers? Are you sure we can trust them?" "They're not saints, but they hate authority as much as we do right now," Marcus replied. "If anyone can level the playing field, it's them." Before they could discuss further, Luma pointed urgently toward the horizon. Through gaps in the trees, they spotted lights moving along the coast, flashlights sweeping through the darkness as agents closed in. Time was running out. "Let's go," Elena urged, helping Luma navigate the steep path down to the shore. Once they reached the base of the cliff, Marcus led them into a narrow opening barely visible behind thick seaweed. Inside, the air smelled damp and briny, but the cave provided cover from prying eyes. Settling into the cramped space, Elena pulled out her own phone and typed a reply to the signal. "We need eyes in the sky, watching everything." Minutes later, another message came through. "Drones deployed. Keep moving south. Safe zone located." Marcus let out a low whistle. "Looks like we've got backup after all." But Luma wasn't celebrating. She stared at her device, which projected the swirling mass of darkness once again. This time, the image shifted, showing Earth surrounded by smaller dots, other planets being consumed by the entity. Her expression grew grim. "She's telling us something," Elena said, interpreting Luma's gestures. "That thing. It's coming faster because of her." Marcus frowned. "Then we don't just need allies. We need a plan. And fast." Outside, the search continued, voices growing louder as agents neared the cave entrance. But inside, the trio huddled together, united by a shared purpose. They had escaped, for now. But survival meant more than hiding. It meant fighting back. And for that, they'd need every ally they could find, even ones lurking in the digital shadows. The cave was damp and cold, but the trio huddled together in silence, listening to the distant shouts of agents combing the coastline. Luma sat cross-legged on the rocky floor, her glowing skin dimmed to a faint shimmer. She stared at her device, projecting the ominous image of the dark entity consuming planets. Each time she touched the screen-like surface, it pulsed weakly, as if struggling to process her commands. "We can't stay here," Marcus whispered, glancing toward the cave entrance, where shadows danced from flashlights outside. "They'll find us sooner or later." Elena nodded, her eyes darting around nervously. "The signal said there's a safe zone south of here. If we move now." A sudden noise cut her off, a soft rustling behind them. All three turned sharply, hearts pounding. From the shadows emerged Dr. Ryan Keller, their lab assistant. His face was pale, his hands raised defensively. "It's just me," he said quickly, stepping into the dim light. "I followed you. I wanted to help." Marcus frowned, suspicion creeping into his voice. "How did you know where to find us?" Ryan hesitated, then sighed. "I overheard the agents talking. They think you're hiding near the cliffs. I figured you'd come here." He looked at Luma, his expression softening. "She doesn't deserve this. None of you do. For a moment, Alina considered trusting him. After all, Ryan had worked with them for years, but something about his nervous demeanor didn't sit right. Before she could say anything, Luma stood abruptly, her glow intensifying. She pointed accusingly at Ryan, her melodic voice firm. "Liar." Everyone froze. Even Ryan looked startled. "What are you talking about? I'm not lying." But Luma wasn't swayed. She pressed a sequence on her device, and suddenly, a holographic map appeared, showing their location, and a blinking red dot moving steadily closer. It matched Ryan's position exactly. "She tracked your phone," Marcus realized, glaring at Ryan. "You tipped them off." Ryan's shoulders slumped in defeat. "I didn't have a choice. They'd promised me protection. If I helped them, they'd leave me alone. You don't understand what they're capable of." Alina stepped forward, her voice icy. "And what about her?" She gestured to Luma. "Do you even care what happens to her?" Before Ryan could respond, shouts erupted outside the cave. Flashlights swept through the opening, illuminating the jagged walls. Agents were closing in. "Go," Marcus shouted, grabbing Luma's hand. "We'll deal with him later." The group bolted deeper into the cave system, navigating narrow passages slick with seawater. Behind them, Ryan called out desperately, "Wait. Please, I'm sorry." But no one looked back. As they reached a dead end, Marcus spotted a narrow tunnel leading upward. "This way," he urged, climbing first to ensure it was safe. Alina helped Luma scramble up after him, her heart racing as the sounds of pursuit grew louder. When they emerged onto a rocky ledge overlooking the ocean, relief washed over them. But only briefly. Below, agents surrounded the base of the cliff, cutting off any easy escape routes. Trapped between the sea and their hunters, hope seemed fleeting. Then Luma acted. Raising her hands, she unleashed a blinding burst of light that illuminated the entire coastline. Agents shielded their eyes, stumbling backward in confusion. The distraction gave the trio precious seconds to flee along the ledge toward an old fishing boat tied to a makeshift dock, the same vessel the signal had arranged for their escape. "Get on," Marcus yelled, helping Luma aboard while Alina untied the ropes. As the engine roared to life, agents regained their footing, firing warning shots that splintered the wooden dock. "Hold on," Alina shouted, steering the boat into open water. Bullets ricocheted harmlessly off the hull as they sped away, leaving chaos and betrayal behind. Under the cover of darkness, with waves crashing around them, the trio finally allowed themselves a moment of respite. Luma leaned against Alina, her glow steady once more. For now, they were safe. But trust, once broken, would be hard to rebuild, as would their chances of stopping the shadowy threat looming ever closer. The fishing boat cut through the waves under a moonless sky, its engine humming steadily as Alina steered them further from shore. The cold ocean breeze whipped at their faces, carrying with it the salty tang of seawater. Luma sat near the bow, her glowing skin dimmed to a soft shimmer that reflected off the water's surface. She seemed calmer now, though her eyes remained fixed on the horizon, as if searching for something or someone. Marcus stood beside Alina, scanning the dark waters with binoculars. "If the signal's intel is right, we should see the island soon," he said, his voice low but steady. "It's remote enough to keep us hidden. For a while, at least." Alina nodded, gripping the wheel tightly. Her hands were still trembling slightly from the adrenaline rush of their narrow escape. "Let's hope they're as good as they claim to be." Behind them, the coastline had faded into darkness, leaving only the endless expanse of ocean stretching in all directions. For the first time since the crash landing, they felt a flicker of safety, but it was fragile, fleeting. After what felt like hours, a jagged silhouette emerged on the horizon. The island was small and uninhabited, surrounded by treacherous reefs that made navigation perilous. Marcus pointed to a narrow channel cutting through the rocks. "That's our way in. Careful. The currents are strong." Alina guided the boat cautiously, her focus unwavering as she navigated the maze of jagged formations. Once inside the lagoon, the waters calmed, revealing a pristine cove sheltered by towering cliffs. A dense jungle covered most of the island, its green canopy glowing faintly under the starlight. "This place is perfect," Marcus murmured, his tone tinged with awe. "No one would think to look here." As they anchored the boat and stepped onto the sandy beach, Luma knelt down, running her fingers through the damp sand. Her glow brightened momentarily, and a strange sound, like a soft hum, emanated from her device. It was almost as if the island itself resonated with her presence. Over the next few days, they set up a makeshift camp deep within the jungle. Marcus used materials scavenged from the boat to create rudimentary shelters, while Alina worked tirelessly to decode more data from Luma's device. Meanwhile, Luma spent hours exploring the island, forming an unexpected bond with the marine life surrounding it. One morning, Alina watched in amazement as Luma waded into the shallows, her hands glowing softly. Schools of fish swarmed around her, their movements synchronized as if drawn to her energy. Even larger creatures, a curious shark and a pair of sea turtles, approached without hesitation, brushing against her legs before retreating peacefully. "She's communicating with them," Marcus whispered, standing beside Alina. "Just like she did with us." Alina nodded, her mind racing. Her species must have evolved alongside these ecosystems. That's why she feels so connected. But their newfound sanctuary wasn't without challenges. Drones began appearing overhead, circling the island like mechanical vultures. Though the signal managed to intercept some surveillance feeds, the agents were closing in. Each passing day brought fresh tension, forcing the trio to stay vigilant. One evening, as they gathered around a small fire, Luma held up her device. Its screen projected images of Earth surrounded by swirling darkness, the entity growing closer. She pointed to herself, then to the image, her expression grim. "She's saying it's coming because of her," Alina translated, her voice heavy with dread. "It senses her presence." Marcus sighed, rubbing his temples. "Then we need to figure out how to stop it, or at least slow it down. Because if it reaches Earth—" He didn't finish the sentence. None of them needed him to. For now, the island offered refuge, a fragile haven amidst chaos. But beyond the horizon, danger loomed, and survival meant more than hiding. It meant finding a way to fight back. The days on the island passed in a blur of urgency and tension. Alina, Marcus, and Luma worked tirelessly to piece together fragments of information from her device, each discovery bringing them closer to understanding the entity, but also deepening their dread. The swirling mass of darkness was no longer just an image. It pulsed with life, growing larger as it consumed everything in its path. Earth wasn't just its next target. It was its destination. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in fiery hues, Luma sat cross-legged by the water's edge. Her device projected a map of the solar system onto the sand, showing the entity's trajectory. It was moving faster now, drawn inexorably toward Earth by some unknown force, perhaps even Luma herself. "She thinks it feeds on energy," Alina said, crouching beside her. "Not destruction for the sake of chaos, but consumption, like a predator." Marcus frowned, pacing along the shoreline. "So what do we do? Fight fire with fire? We can't exactly outgun a cosmic monster." Luma looked up, her glowing skin dimming slightly as she gestured toward the ocean. She pointed to the schools of fish swimming harmoniously, then to the waves crashing rhythmically against the shore. Finally, she touched her chest and said one word: "Symbiosis." Alina tilted her head, trying to decipher her meaning. "She's saying we need balance, harmony instead of conflict." "But how does that stop something that eats planets?" Marcus asked skeptically. Luma pressed another sequence on her device, and this time, the projection shifted. Images of her species appeared, tall, luminous beings working alongside ecosystems, nurturing life rather than destroying it. Then came scenes of devastation, worlds crumbling under the weight of greed, hatred, and fear. The message was clear. The entity thrived on imbalance, feeding off humanity's darker impulses. We have to show it another way, Elena realized aloud. If we can channel enough positive energy, cooperation, unity, we might be able to pacify it. Marcus raised an eyebrow. That sounds great in theory, but how do we pull it off? Humanity isn't exactly known for playing nice. Luma nodded, agreeing silently. She reached out, taking both of their hands in hers. Her glow intensified, filling the space between them with warmth. Slowly, she began transferring images into their minds. Not words, but feelings. Trust, hope, resilience. For the first time, they truly understood her vision. Meanwhile, news of the impending threat spread worldwide. Governments scrambled to respond, launching futile attacks aimed at the entity as it entered Earth's orbit. Missiles exploded harmlessly against its surface, only fueling its hunger. Panic gripped nations, with riots breaking out in cities and conspiracy theories running rampant online. Desperate to warn humanity, Elena and Marcus broadcast Luma's message globally using equipment provided by the signal. They pleaded for cooperation, urging people to focus on renewable energy sources and work together to create a massive energy network. But skepticism abounded. Some accused them of fabricating the story to protect Luma. Others dismissed the idea entirely, clinging to militaristic solutions. Despite the backlash, pockets of support emerged. Volunteers joined forces, building generators powered by wind, solar, and hydroelectric systems. Scientists collaborated across borders, pooling resources to amplify the network's output. At the center of it all stood Luma, her presence inspiring those who dared to believe. Finally, the day arrived. The entity loomed overhead, blotting out the sun with its vast shadow. Fear rippled through the crowd gathered near the energy grid, but Luma stepped forward without hesitation. Holding her device aloft, she channeled the collective energy into a beacon, a pulsating light meant to offer peace rather than provoke war. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, slowly, the entity paused, its movements uncertain. Could harmony really conquer hunger? As the world held its breath, Luma closed her eyes, focusing every ounce of her strength. This wasn't just about survival. It was about proving that even in the face of darkness, light could prevail. The air was electric as the entity hovered above Earth, its shadow stretching across continents like a shroud. The beacon of light emanating from Luma pulsed rhythmically, casting an ethereal glow over the makeshift energy grid below. Thousands had gathered around it, scientists, volunteers, and ordinary citizens who believed in her vision. But just as many watched from afar, their skepticism palpable even through live broadcasts. Elena stood beside Luma, her hands trembling as she monitored the readings on a portable console. "It's working," she whispered, glancing at Marcus. "The energy output is holding steady." Marcus nodded grimly, his eyes fixed on the monstrous form blotting out the sky. "For now. But if this fails..." He didn't finish the sentence. No one needed him to. Luma remained calm, her focus unwavering. She extended both arms toward the heavens, her glowing skin brighter than ever before. Beams of light shot upward from the device in her hands, connecting with the entity in a dazzling display of power. For a moment, it seemed to hesitate, its swirling mass contracting slightly as if uncertain how to respond. But then came the backlash, a surge of darkness that rippled outward, destabilizing the grid. Sparks flew, and sections of the network began to fail. Screams erupted from the crowd as panic set in. "We're losing it," Marcus shouted, rushing to stabilize a failing generator. Elena joined him, shouting instructions to nearby technicians. "Divert power from auxiliary systems. Keep the core online." Amid the chaos, Luma stumbled backward, her strength waning. The effort of channeling so much energy was taking its toll. Her glow dimmed dangerously, and for the first time since they'd met her, she looked vulnerable. Fragile. No, Alina said firmly, grabbing her shoulders. You can't give up now. We need you. Luma shook her head weakly, pointing to the crowd. Not me. You. Realization dawned on Alina's face. This wasn't just Luma's fight, it was humanity's. If they wanted to survive, they had to take responsibility. Turning to the crowd, she raised her voice above the noise. Listen to me. This isn't about technology or machines. It's about us. We have to believe in each other. Her words cut through the fear like a blade. Slowly, people began to move, not away, but closer. Some linked hands, forming chains of unity. Others sang songs or chanted prayers, their voices rising in unison. Even those watching remotely found ways to contribute, lighting candles or sharing messages of hope online. The collective energy surged, reigniting the faltering grid. Marcus watched in awe as the beacon grew stronger, its light piercing the entity's dark veil. She's right, he murmured. It's not just her, it's all of us. As the combined energy reached its peak, Luma stepped forward once more, her glow reignited by the outpouring of support. With a final burst of determination, she directed the beacon straight into the heart of the entity. For a moment, everything froze. The world seemed to hold its breath. Then, slowly, the entity began to change. Its swirling darkness softened, transforming into streaks of radiant color. It no longer consumed. It absorbed, feeding on the harmony instead of destruction. The skies cleared, revealing stars twinkling faintly against the night. Cheers erupted from the crowd, tears streaming down faces as relief washed over them. But Luma sank to her knees, exhausted. Her device flickered and went dark, its purpose fulfilled. Alina knelt beside her, cradling her gently. You did it, she whispered. We did it. Luma smiled faintly, her voice barely audible. Together. The battle was won, but the war wasn't over. Humanity had proven it could rise above fear, but the scars would remain. And for Luma, there was still one final journey ahead. The aftermath of the entity's departure left Earth in a state of fragile calm. The skies were clear, and the air felt lighter, as if the planet itself had exhaled after holding its breath for so long. For the first time in days, Alina, Marcus, and Luma allowed themselves to rest. They sat by the water's edge on the island, watching the sun rise over the horizon. Its golden light bathed the world in warmth, a stark contrast to the darkness that had loomed just hours before. Luma held her now silent device in her hands, turning it over thoughtfully. Though it no longer pulsed with energy, she seemed at peace, as if knowing her mission was complete. She glanced at Alina and Marcus, her glowing skin dimming to a soft shimmer, and touched her chest before pointing to them. Her message was clear. Their bond had become her strength, and humanity's salvation. We'll help you get home, Alina promised softly, placing a hand on Luma's shoulder. You've done enough for us. Marcus nodded, already sketching plans in his notebook. We can repair your ship or build something new, whatever it takes. But Luma shook her head gently, gesturing toward the stars. She tapped her device one last time, and a holographic image appeared, a map of constellations leading to her homeworld. It wasn't far, but it would require resources they didn't have. Before they could discuss further, the signal contacted them through an encrypted message. World leaders want answers. Be ready. Alina sighed, rubbing her temples. They'll never leave us alone, will they? They don't trust easily, Marcus replied grimly. Not after everything. Despite the looming scrutiny, the trio worked tirelessly to prepare Luma for her journey. With assistance from rogue scientists and volunteers inspired by her bravery, they constructed a small spacecraft using salvaged materials from the island and Luma's original crash site. It wasn't luxurious, but it was functional, and more importantly, safe. On the day of departure, a small group gathered on the beach to bid farewell. Among them were members of the Signal, who had risked everything to protect Luma, and even some locals who had once feared her but now saw her as a symbol of hope. As she stepped into the spacecraft, Luma paused, looking back at the faces around her. Her expression softened, and she raised a hand in gratitude. Then, without warning, she reached into her pocket and pulled out a small, seed-like object. Placing it carefully in Alina's palm, she whispered one word: "Grow." Before anyone could ask what it meant, the spacecraft hummed to life, lifting off the sand and ascending into the sky. Within moments, it disappeared among the stars, leaving behind only silence and the promise of change. Weeks later, the seed began to sprout. Buried in fertile soil near the ocean, it grew into a towering tree unlike anything Earth had ever seen. Its leaves shimmered like Luma's skin, glowing faintly at night and purifying the surrounding air. Scientists marveled at its properties, discovering it could cleanse pollution and restore ecosystems damaged by centuries of neglect. As news of the miraculous tree spread, humanity reflected on its actions during those critical days. Some remained skeptical, clinging to fear and division, but many others embraced Luma's legacy of harmony and unity, working together to heal the planet. Schools named environmental programs after her, and artists immortalized her story in paintings and songs. For Alina and Marcus, life returned to a semblance of normalcy, but they knew nothing would ever be the same. Every evening, they visited the tree, sitting beneath its glowing canopy and remembering the girl who had taught them, and the world, that compassion transcended boundaries. Above them, the stars twinkled brightly, each one a reminder that hope could shine even in the darkest corners of the universe. And somewhere among them, Luma traveled home, carrying with her the knowledge that even the so-called carnivorous humans could embody kindness when given the chance. In the end, her light had not only saved Earth, it had changed it forever.